We're glad you're able to join us today for our next edition of our 49er Industry Chats. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement at Cal State Long Beach. A couple house rules before we begin. If you, at any time during our conversation today, if you have any questions, we encourage you to use the Q&A box located below to submit any of your questions. Also, this session is being recorded and it will live on our website at CSULB alumni, csulb.edu/alumni for your viewing pleasure at any time or sharing with your fellow friends and family members. And now I would like to introduce our guest speaker. Chris Hernandez is a proud alum and earned a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from CSULB. In addition, he holds a master's degree in management from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Sloan Fellows Program. He currently serves as Sector Vice President, Technical Talent Development for Research, Technology, and Engineering at Northrop Grumman Aeronautics Systems, a premier provider of military aircraft, autonomous systems, aerospace structures, and next-generation solutions. Previous roles include Vice President of Research, Technology, and Engineering, where he managed the processes and tools used to design and develop the sector's wide array of products and programs, as well as Vice President of Advanced Systems, where he led the creation of advanced system solutions for future programs such as Next-Generation Air Dominance Fighters, Long Range Strike and ISR Systems, Advanced Weapons, and Future Cargo/Transport Systems. He is also a current member and former chair of the CSULB College of Engineering Dean's Advisory Council. We're honored to welcome Mr. Chris Hernandez, who will be leading today's industry chat. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to be able to chat with you today.
That's great. It's great to be here. Anytime I can interact with a college, I have a great time. So thank you for having me.
Hey, so we'll get started. Just want to know, we could start a little bit, on how you got started, why you chose CSULB, and then your trajectory to where you are today.
Yeah, that's a long story. I've been working for 42 years now, and I have announced my retirement. So January, I'll be pulling the plug, and I'm transitioning out of my job. Well, thank you. But it started a long time ago. I grew up in Norwalk, which is not far from the beach. I have 4 brothers, parents. Nobody went to college. Well, my older brother went first, and then I. Parents really stressed school and work ethic and respect for people back then. I was a busboy in a restaurant, and at 16, and I met a gentleman that used to come into the restaurant regularly with a group of people. They were all executives from Rockwell International, which was right next door to the restaurant. And at that time, Rockwell International was developing the space shuttle. So I became friends with one of these gentlemen named Ed Smith. It turns out he was the vice president and program manager for the shuttle program. And he and I did become friends, and he said, well, what are you going to do when you graduate from high school? And I said, well, I don't really know. Maybe I'll go and join the Marines. My dad was a Marine. I thought I might do that. Maybe I'll become a policeman. My neighbor was a policeman. So my scope of what I could potentially do was limited to what I knew. And I didn't know a lot. I was a kid in Norwalk, never really been anywhere else. So he said, well, why don't you come work with us on the space shuttle? And I said, well, does it pay more than $225 an hour? Because that's what I make here. He says, yeah, it probably does. And so that became my career. I joined their co-op program, ended up at Long Beach State, and 42 years later, I'm here.
Yeah, you strike on the importance of mentoring, how important it is to find a mentor early on that could guide you into a career, a path, a task that you want to do in the future. So
yeah,
I do see that. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say Ed Smith became he became my lifelong mentor. He's 93 now, and I still stay in touch with him and visit him, not as often due to COVID, but still a very, very a dear person in my life.
So you get to Cal State Long Beach and you choose an engineering career. How was your experience at the university?
Well, you know, Long Beach is an interesting place because it's a commuter school. Many of us, I'm sure many of our audience today will resonate with this statement. If you're living local, which most do, and you're working, which I was, and you're studying, you know, you're limited to what you can do with the school. So I did have a limited interface with the campus activities. Most of my interactions were with my friends in the College of Engineering through the engineering clubs and the partying that went on with the clubs. Work was fun and exciting, and it pulled on me always. And to be honest with you, my academic performance probably suffered because I had to work at least 20 hours a week to stay on Northrop benefits while I went to school. But I was always working 30 or more and trying to go to school. And school was hard for me. I'm not one of those individuals where, you know, you read the book and pay attention a little bit in class and take the test, you get an A. No, I got to work really hard to get a decent grade. So school was great. I enjoyed the other students that I engaged with on campus, but I was really sort of deep into work at that point.
Right. And your story is like many of our current students right now, you know, the working and going to school, sometimes working two part-time jobs to be able to help out their families. Can you walk us through a professional day in your role? What does a day look like for you?
So right now I'm having fun. So I'm going to take you back to the job I had just before the one I'm in now. When I was the head of research technology engineering, we had 8,800 engineers that worked for me. There were five vice presidents that worked for me. Most of my day is sitting and listening to people's problems. If you were to look at my Outlook calendar, from basically 7 in the morning to 5 in the evening every day, it's just full of meetings or traveling to meetings. Every now and then my secretary will slide in a fun thing where I get to go congratulate a team on an accomplishment or go meet with a customer and talk about some problems they have. But I told my son that. He asked me the same question once when he was a teenager. He said, "Dad, what do you do at work all day?" And I said, "Well, I sit in meetings all day and listen to people's problems." And he says, "Well, that really sounds like it sucks." And I said, "Well, you know, it does have a little bit of a downside to it, but you know, I help them solve those problems. They come to me with those problems and they have suggestions on how to solve them. And they're asking for my opinion because I have experience in a lot of different areas. And sometimes I can steer them on a path they weren't even thinking about. And then I feel good. Then I feel like I've accomplished something."
Great. And I know you have your master's degree. How has that helped you in your management of, you know, these large teams that you oversee?
Yeah, that was phenomenal. I was selected by the company to go to MIT Sloan School and get my master's in management in 1994. And remember in the beginning, I said, you know, we all are limited in our sort of future planning by what it is we know. And being the kid from Norwalk, I didn't know a lot. And my boss at the time said, your eyes are going to be open through this experience. So I go into this program. There are 36 students from 13 different countries, 8 women, and all different businesses, General Motors, Ford, Caterpillar, AT&T, oil companies, pharmaceuticals, medical supply. And so I learned a lot from my classmates, the other 36 people or 35 people that were in the program. The curriculum is like an MBA program. You learn about accounting and finance and economics in HR and all those things. And those do serve me in my job and executing a large organization. But the thing that helped me the most was opening my eyes to the rest of the world. We actually went around the world as a part of the class. We traveled from Boston to California to Japan to China, and then into India, and then back to Boston as a part of a 10-day, go see the world. We were studying the economies of China and India at the time in economics. And so we went to those countries to actually learn more. Those experiences for me were just unbelievable, and they've helped me in my career significantly, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah, that global perspective and education. I mean, for a current student now, would you recommend that they look into study abroad, if that's a possibility for them?
Absolutely. And I will say this, no matter what you do, don't stop. You never stop learning. There was a lecturer who came to one of our executive offsites once, an author named Warren Bennis, wrote a lot of books about leadership in the 80s. And he told us he had finished the study and said that if a company takes $1 and puts it into traditional PP&E, buildings, equipment, stuff like that, capital, you get a return of X. If you take the same dollar and you put it in your employees, you invest in them in training and education, you get a return of 4X. And he had a lot of data to support that. And he was lecturing us. He was mad at us. He said, why do you do that? The first time there's a budget crunch, you cut the training budget. Why do you do that? You should continually try to invest into your employees and educate them and broaden them. And it almost doesn't matter what they're being educated in. They could be learning music. They could be learning art. They could be, and especially for engineers, we see that collision of art and science often produces phenomenal solutions. So yes, whatever you can do to expand your horizons, it could be just sitting at home and reading books that you wouldn't have thought of reading on your own. Have somebody suggest things to you just to expand your aperture of understanding of the world.
Wonderful. So we started to get questions in our chat box. I have a question that says, what was your first job at Rockwell like? What were the challenges you faced during that time?
Yeah. So if you've ever seen the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, you remember at the end when they take the ark to that warehouse and there's just rows and rows and rows of stuff? That was my first job. Not in the movie, but there were rows and rows and rows of drawings on vellum paper in these cardboard tubes stuck and racked all the way to the ceiling. And they were all Apollo drawings. And I had to pull out the Apollo drawing. Every one of them I opened and looked at. Amazing. And then I would take the space shuttle drawing, read the number off, write it on the end of the cap, roll up the drawing, slide it in the tube, put the cap on, and do the next one. So I did that. That was my first job for 3 hours a day, every day after school. But while it sounds mundane, if you're sort of a nerdy person, looking at all of those old Apollo drawings was just amazing. And in that room, there was a Saturn V command module operations book. It's a big, thick book that tells the astronauts, this is how you fly this thing. And I asked my boss, well, what do we do with these books over? He says, I'll just throw them in the dumpster. So that book came home with me. And I still flip through it every now and then just to kind of take a look at what was going on back in the 60s.
Oh my God. How great to have that experience that you've, worked with NASA and could say, I was a part of that project, once you see it get off the ground.
Yeah.
I
have a short story on this. Short story.
Okay.
When I was still in college, I had done some analysis on a circuit, and I got to present it to NASA at Johnson Space Center. So we're on the telephone, we fax them the charts, we have the charts, and we talk. And I said, well, this is a very simple switch function. It does this, it interacts with this, it needs this input, and we could implement this very simply in software. And then there's a crack on the phone. Excuse me, who's speaking? And my director's in the room, and he nudges me and he says, answer. And I said, oh, this is Chris Hernandez, sir. I'm a co-op student here at Rockwell. He says, well, this is John Young. I'm the commander of the space shuttle, the very first one that we're going to fly. And let me tell you, we astronauts decide what's going to be a switch and what's not going to be a switch. So I appreciate your input, but leave that to us. And so in my very first briefing to the astronauts, I sort of get scolded for being out of my lane and telling them it should or shouldn't be a switch.
Right.
Anyway.
Oh my goodness. What about working at Rockwell kept you engaged? I know I was looking through your LinkedIn profiles. I know you were there, for several years.
Yeah, Rockwell, the program, the space shuttle, designing and building a reusable space shuttle. And when I got there, we were doing the approach and landing test where we would attach it to a 747, fly the 747, and then drop the shuttle and let it land without any propulsion, which is what it would have to do when it comes back from space. But I was a part of the first flight. I was not many people know. Well, people know about the command center in Johnson Space Center because it's always in the movies, Apollo 13. You see all those men at the screens. Well, that's true. And in Johnson, there's another command center that's a backup to that command center, which mostly contractors are in. And in Downey, California, around the clock, there's another command center. And that's where I got to sit on third shift through the early flights. And whatever work the other two centers didn't want to do came to us. Analyze this. What if this was to happen? What would happen? And so that, the engagement was phenomenal. I mean, the program, the excitement, the whole thought of the space program was just hanging on me and not letting go, which is why I had a tough time, staying at school and studying because I wanted to be there doing that.
Yeah, but you were probably applying what you were learning. Like you were totally hands-on, you were learning from firsthand experience at that time, which it might be more valuable than, sometimes what the books might teach you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll tell the students out there and even the early career people that, do that as much as you can, as long as you can, because if you end up on a leadership path, you end up in management, you don't get to do it anymore. You're responsible for people and making sure people have the tools and methods they need to get the work done. And you're not doing any real engineering anymore. I haven't done any real engineering probably in, 30 years, who knows? Now it's been so long, they probably wouldn't let me do anything, even if I wanted to. So yeah.
You'd have to get a new degree to be able to do it now.
Yeah, I could go back to school. I'm retiring.
PhD in the horizon, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. You never know.
You never know. I have another question. What advice do you have for someone starting their career in engineering and aeronautics? Advice you wish you had early on in your career?
Well, there's so many things. I think that it's worked out for me, but if you're just starting your career, you need to think about what your career path wants to be. If you want to be a vice president of a major corporation or the general manager or the CEO of a major corporation, there's a commitment and a sacrifice that is made to get there, because not everybody gets there. If you want to be the best engineer there ever was as an individual contributor to many great projects, there's a commitment also, but it's different. It's very different. As I look back on my career, when I was the general manager of a business, I pretty much, my life was work. Had very, very limited time. There were lots of black tie affairs and socials and galas. That's on top of, working 9 to 5. So, well, I don't regret what I did. What I would suggest to our audience is that you think about that early in your career and you make a conscious decision as to what you want to do. Because while you're potentially by yourself, you have more latitude. But sooner or later, you meet somebody and now you're two. And then sooner or later, you two usually make more and now you're a family. And what you're willing to sacrifice now is not just up to you. It has to be a part of the family's decision that you're going to work as much as you might need to for those extra promotions and growth. And I highly recommend that you have those conversations, because I've witnessed people's relationships fall apart because they didn't have those conversations. And one party was going this way and the other party is going that way. And the next thing you know, they're too far apart to come back together. And it's just sad. I don't wish that upon anybody. So think about what your career wants to be and how you're going to get there. And then as you move through life, recognize that your career now is a function of somebody else, most typically.
Right, definitely. I do have another question that's kind of follow up to what you just addressed. What can students who hasn't been exposed much on internships after they graduate do to be able to enter the engineering field?
Well, if you have an engineering degree, it's not a requirement that you had an internship also. We hire people that have never interned with us. They might have interned with somebody else, or they may not have interned at all. We're big about hiring college students from the affinity conferences like BEA, SHEP, HENAC. We will stumble onto talent at those conferences that we've never met before, never worked for us, maybe didn't work for anybody else, but we just fall in love with them. We said, you're a great person. We'd love for you to be on our team. And then we hire them. In our sector alone, we hire about 500 college grads a year. And we have about the same number of interns every year. The interns is a good way for us to create a pipeline, though. It's the best way for us because you need a security clearance to do the work we do most of the time. And it takes almost 2 years in the case of a top secret and a year for a secret. So if you come in as an intern, the minute you're an intern, I can now put you in for a clearance. And a year later, when you come back to intern again, hopefully, you now have a clearance. And then in 2 years, when you graduate, you now have a top secret clearance. And then I can put you on a lot of different work. So the internships are an important element of trying to get an early start on your career. If you can get one, great. I would work hard at getting one. If you don't, it's not the end of the world because we still do hire people, and so do other companies hire people without interning them.
Do you count in your evaluation their extracurricular activities such as clubs and things like that in your evaluation?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to say this for most managers and leaders at Northrop Grumman and most companies. Not everybody evaluates and judges the same way, so I can't say all. It's not a company policy, but most people, we look at a resume and we look at the whole person. To be honest with you, I am more interested in the individual that, let's say, they come from a home where the parents didn't go to college. They have to help pay for the living of the family. So they have jobs in addition to going to school. In addition to that, they're either in sports or they're involved in some community activity. Or maybe they became an Eagle Scout also while they were, growing up. That's a very, very well-rounded individual. That person knows what it takes to get stuff really done. So I would take that person with a GPA, a 2.8 over a GPA 3.5 that all they did was go to school. Because like I said, when I went to undergrad and my GPA wasn't so good, I worked. When I went to graduate school, all I did was go to school. My GPA was great. So I have my own empirical data points about the demands it puts on people when you have to work and you have to help a family or an elderly parent or whatever the case might be.
Right. Yeah. You're evaluating the person and how well-rounded they are and really what skills they bring as a person, to your company.
Yes.
I do have another question in the chat box. You have a fellow Norwalk resident doing a shout out to you. And he's saying he works for, I work for a fellow Norwalk resident, and he currently works in your industry as a civilian side and has a few questions. Do you think that aerospace is a rewarding career, and do you prefer government or private sector better?
Yeah, I only know the private sector, but I know a lot of people that have committed themselves to work as either active duty or civilians for the government, and they find it equally rewarding. What's rewarding about what we do is that for me, most of my life has been involved in developing advanced technology for the country. But the last 30 years have been in providing capabilities to the Department of Defense. And what's rewarding about that is, you think about this, there are young people that that are not on the path to college, they're going to go put a uniform on and join our nation's services, either as a Marine, an Air Force, Navy, Army. And they're going to put their life on the line. At any minute, they could be called up and shipped overseas where people are shooting at them. And what we do, since I did not do that, what we do as my company is we give them capabilities. We give them communication systems. We give them airplanes. Other companies give them tanks and ships. And those products are specifically designed to help those young people go execute the nation's business and come back home safely to their families. I can't think of a more noble, rewarding thing to do that. And in my career, I've had colleagues, especially with the conflict in the Middle East that was so protracted, I have colleagues who have children in combat, and we're working together to try and get them capabilities. When you know people that are actually there, it makes it more and more impactful and more meaningful.
Yeah, more personal, you know, at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yes.
Another question. What are the international prospects with Northrop? Is retention a problem for international positions? And what is chance for engineers to transfer overseas?
It's not as much as maybe other companies that specialize in overseas, because most of the products that we develop are for the Department of Defense. Not all of them are exportable. Some are. For example, our Global Hawk unmanned airplane. We are currently exporting it to Australia, to Japan, and to NATO. And we have other prospective customers. And so when we do sell those products overseas, usually there's a small contingent of Northrop engineers that go along with them to help them get up and running and teach them this is what it is, this is how it works, this is how you use it, blah, blah, blah. But there's not a lot. I don't want to mislead anybody. Other parts of our business do more international sales. Our mission systems sector in Baltimore, Maryland, they sell electronics capabilities for satellites and airplanes. They have more international sales than us. Attrition in international, people go, they expatriate, and they're there for a few years, and then they come back. They typically don't leave us while they're there, so we don't see a problem in that area at all.
Okay. You know, and the times we're living as COVID, how has your company responded to the shift with COVID, and how do you foresee will continue to evolve over time? Like many of us are working from home.
Yeah, I think that I'm very proud, not just of the company and our leadership and how they responded to COVID, but the people, because they got creative. They were doing stuff on their own. They're figuring out ways to protect each other. That's what they had to do, because our work, a good portion of it is classified, so you can't do it from home. The only time I go into the office is when we're going to have a classified meeting that I have to be there personally in, because I have to go there. I can't call into it. So in our classified space, I'm so proud of our engineers and how creative they were. They staggered their work. So let's say they have a room of 100 people, and now they really want that room to only have 50 people at a time. Okay, well, now we're going to do 2 shifts. 50 of us are going to come in early and leave early, and 50 are going to come in late and stay late. And some people like working a second shift, so it worked out well. The facilities team had gotten estimates from suppliers for partitions in our cubicle space area, an exorbitant amount of money and going to take a long time. And our engineers in the Fab Lab, which is our makerspace, came up with better solutions, cheaper and faster. And we started implementing those. So we adapted to COVID, and we are continuing to thrive as a company. In our earnings reports, we're continuing to do well, and we foresee that into the future. As far as the long term, what's going to happen, I think a lot of companies are going to rethink how much office space they really need for their employees. Office space is really expensive. So if you're a speculator, you might think about investing in some real estate down the road here.
Definitely. I have another question, or my thing is, yeah. how does one find a good mentor? You know, they've been having problems due to the COVID. When people are working remote, it's difficult to establish that personal connection. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I, I continue to mentor people, not just our employees. I'm involved with a program. It's a nonprofit that connects executives with soon to separate military personnel. I'm working with a Marine colonel right now. He's going to be out in 3 months, but I've been mentoring him for a year, and he's asking me questions about business because he doesn't know. He's a Marine. He fights wars,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But in terms of finding a mentor, people like to talk about what they do, and they're flattered if you're asking them for their advice and opinion. You just have to reach out and ask them. You know, if you're a new engineer into a company, look in your phone directory and your Outlook directory, find somebody that's a manager in a department that maybe is not even your department, and just say, my name is John Doe. I just graduated from Long Beach State. I now work for BAE, and I saw your name and you're the manager of blah, blah, blah. I'm really interested in blah, blah, blah. Would you mind having a cup of coffee sometime? Or in the case of COVID, would you mind giving me a 15-minute phone call? I have a couple of questions for you. But have some questions, because I've had mentees come to me and they want a mentorship, and they come in and they got nothing. They just expect me to maybe, just throw stuff out at them. So if you do make that connection, which they will most likely say yes to, think about some questions you want to ask them to instigate a dialogue. You just need to prompt it. They're going to go off and tell you a lot of stuff. And then, you maintain that relationship, you get as much of it as you can. And when it's not teaching you anything new anymore, you move on to another person. The whole idea is accumulate knowledge by whatever means you can.
Definitely do your homework, kind of like when you're going to interview for a position, you do your research before you sit down with your interview, and you come prepared with your questions. That's what you kind of have to do now to find a mentor.
Yeah.
Be prepared. Do your homework.
Absolutely.
Given the COVID restrictions on classes and clubs and making hands-on experience much more difficult, how essential is hands-on project experience for entry-level jobs at this time?
I don't think it's absolute. I mean, there's obviously value in it because we do it. If there was no value in it, we wouldn't do it, and then we wouldn't need all that laboratory space, and it would be cheaper to get a degree. But there is value in it. I think that most universities are thinking about constructs where the actual experiment or the demonstration is done by a professor in an environment and you witness it as opposed to actually doing it. It's not the same, but I think it's still good. And I don't think it's going to hurt you at all. The stuff you do when you're in college is for the most part nothing like what you're going to actually do in industry. Industry, every company's got its own set of tools and methods and procedures, and they're not the same as what you learned in school. The fundamental foundation of your electrical engineering knowledge, your physics and your chemistry and your calculus is what will get you where you need to be. You're going to learn a whole bunch once you're in the company that you work for and how they do engineering. So I don't really see it as being a big negative. It's an unfortunate situation, but I don't think it's going to hurt anybody.
Okay. Does the different engineering companies, do they do like things differently, even though it might be the same angle at the end of the day?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we were ramping up for one of our big programs, we hired a bunch of engineers from Lockheed and Boeing and BAE and Harris and a whole bunch of other companies, but a lot of airplane designers for Lockheed and Boeing. And they came into Northrop and they're like, whoa, you do it this way? We didn't do it that way. Tell me more about how you do it. And they would learn. And in some cases, they would take, they would collaborate with us and sort of evolve a sort of new way or make things even better. We had to be careful and guide them. They can't actually tell us what Boeing and Lockheed do, because that's proprietary to Boeing and Lockheed. but their knowledge and understanding of what we do and can be blended, and we create something new. I've seen that happen.
Okay. I have another question. Chris, you talked about how you taken on a job while attending school. Many students find themselves in the same situation today, and as a result, number of students are taking longer than 4 years to finish their degrees. In your opinion, how does that reflect on a new graduate who may have taken a bit longer to finish?
I don't think it reflects bad at all. I mean, I've done pretty well in my career, and it took me 5.5 years to get my degree. So I think that there's lots of challenges. COVID's going to be yet another one. Finding, getting courses was always a problem when I was in school. You needed to take this course, but the class was full. You couldn't take it. You'd have to wait a semester. So I don't think that's a problem. Now, I don't even think it's a problem. Even if you took 10 years, let's say you're the manager at Starbucks and you're working on your engineering degree, and the best you can do is a class or two a semester, and it takes you 10 years to get your degree. I'm still interested in you. You got through it. You've got a piece of paper that says your engineering, and you have perseverance. Oh man, you're committed. I'm very interested in you. So I wouldn't worry about the length of time it takes to get your degree.
What advice would you give a student who doesn't feel like they're qualified to start or apply for an internship, and they don't think they meet the requirements? Like, should they be learning new softwares that not, for the future and stuff like that?
Well, if you're in an accredited university in an engineering degree program and you've completed 1 year, you're ready to intern. You may not do the same thing as somebody that's been there 3 years, but you can still do stuff and you can still learn stuff, and there's value in that. We're doing more and more of that. We still prefer after your second year and after your third year, those 2 years, but we like pumping that pipeline for the security clearance stuff. So the earlier, the better for us. I don't think if you're in an accredited university, I don't think there's anything specific you need to go learn to do an internship. Internships are about learning about the company you might work for and what they do. It's not so much demonstrating the knowledge that you have and what you bring. You bring an innate capability. That's what the company's interested in. We really want you to learn what we do and how we do it. That's our payoff downstream.
I have a question from an older student. They started later in life, and it says the older students don't get the same break that young students get. What advice would you give to older students or reentry students,
Yeah. If you're interviewing with a company and they seem to be only interested in the 20-year-olds, you play the card that they are playing. Every company in the country is talking about diversity. And diversity comes with age, not just gender and ethnicity. So you're an older person, you have a different lens on life than a 20-year-old. You bring diversity to that company's team, and you emphasize that. You say, I don't think like a 20-year-old. So if that's really what you want, then I'm not your person. But if you want someone that's going to think different than all your 20-year-olds and add to your diversity complexion, then I'm your person. So you just have to sell yourself.
Right. Someone's asking if you could talk about ABIT and why it's important to aerospace engineering.
Say the question again?
Can you talk about ABIT, ABET, and why it's important to aerospace engineering?
I'm not familiar with AEBT. Maybe they could clarify and you could come back.
Yeah, if you guys could clarify what that means, we'll come back to it. So what's one project you wish you worked on during right now at Northrop or at Rockwell that you didn't get to participate in?
Well, when I was the head of engineering, when I was the head of engineering, I worked on them all. That is one of the probably most significant benefits of being the head of engineering, is that any one of the hundreds of programs that the company is working on, my engineers are doing. So I could go in and see what they're doing anytime I wanted. And let me tell you, there's just some phenomenal things that are happening in our company right now. So I don't have any regrets in that area.
Do you get to test out like any of like the planes or the fighter jets and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, so the B-2 bomber, which I spent, I don't know, 10 years on, and ultimately became the chief engineer of the B-2 bomber, it only has 2 seats. And so it'll only, unless you're the Secretary of the Air Force, you're not getting a ride in a B-2 bomber, because both pilots need to be able to fly the airplane in case one of the pilots gets sick, because it's a very expensive and important asset to the country. However, I have flown the simulator many times. And so that is a benefit. The team is eager to show me their great simulation software and capabilities. Come on, sit in, fly it. So yeah, I've flown several of our products in the past, and it's fun.
That's wonderful. Let's see, we got a clarification. It's ABET accreditation. It's the Accreditation Agency for the College of Engineering.
Oh, yeah, okay, extremely important.
Yeah.
We only recruit from accredited universities. I think there's about 250 in the country today with engineering programs that are accredited, and we only recruit from them. So if you're not attending at an accredited university today, you might look at migrating over to one. Like I say, there are many out there. That's sort of just a given for us.
Okay. Due to the hiring limitations at this time, is there a plan to deal with an influx of applicants after the coronavirus is resolved, or for the 20 through 2022 graduates? Or are you guys hiring right now?
We're still hiring. We didn't slow down. We kept hiring. We hire about 40 people a week right now as the numbers. Couple thousand this year is what we'll be hiring. And as I said, 500 interns, 500 college hires. Being a part of the defense industry, we're a part of that essential infrastructure, and we have to keep working. So we have to keep hiring because people are retiring and moving on, and we have to backfill those. In addition to that, we're winning new business and growing. So we're still hiring. And the other aerospace industries are as well, for the most part. Not everybody, but for the most part, most of them are.
Okay. What are your thoughts on working on large companies as an engineer as opposed to working for a small company? This person's heard that large companies, oh yeah, that's the question. So large companies versus small industries.
Yeah, so I've never really worked for a small company. I only worked for Rockwell International, is huge, and Northrop Grumman, which is huge. But I did freelance some work to a small company once. I did some drawings for a small thermocouple company, and and it was me. There was a designer, and then there was a draftsman. I was a draftsman. I think the difference is when you're in a small company as an engineer, you do a lot more. Think of your capstone project. You do the structures, you do the aero, you do the loads, you do the electronics. In a big company, those jobs tend to get specialized. I have a group of people that just do structures, and they're really, really good at it, but that's all they do. They don't do thermal, and they don't do loads and dynamics. They just do structures. So I think if you're in a big company, you're going to be somewhat specialized. Now, you can move around in that earlier in your career, but as you move up, your ability to move across gets harder. If you're in a small company, you're going to do a lot of stuff. You're going to do a lot of the engineering that you learned in school. It'll be like reliving capstone projects. So it's a matter of what floats your boat. The small companies are not doing big projects. They're not going to build a B-2 bomber. So if you want to be a party of the team that's going to build a B-2 bomber, you need to be in a big company. But if it's more important for you to actually do the hands-on engineering across multiple disciplines in engineering, then you want to be with a small company. So it's sort of up to you and what makes you happy.
Right. And that's what someone asked, do you apply what you're learning with your engineering degree to your job, or do you learn as you go?
You certainly apply the fundamentals. Yeah, even in the big company, you apply the fundamentals. The physics is a big piece. You're looking at problems usually. or you're trying to come up with new ways. You don't do a lot of design when you're in school. So if you're a part of design team, you're pretty much going to learn that on the job. But the basics, they have to be there. You have to have a solid technical underpinning to be a good engineer.
You talk about design a lot. Like, do you consider yourself like a good artist, or is it just a computer designer? Is that what it is?
Yeah, well, our designers do, so we design airplanes, right? That's our primary
Right.
job. So the designers, there's collections of skills, like I said. There's a group of about 150 people that are involved in the design of a brand new airplane. And they'll work on it for a year or two, just that small group. And then if it's actually going to be fully developed and built, then you start adding people until you get to 2,000, 3,000 people. We have 4,000 engineers on the B-2 at one point. So of that 150, there's about 3 of them that are actually, quote unquote, designing the B-2 bomber, making it the shape, giving it the curvature, working with aerodynamicists and the loads people. So it's not an artistic thing as much as it is a engineering and physics-based thing.
Okay. What advice do you give to someone that just graduated in the class of 2020 in mechanical engineer? Do you have any tips in applying for jobs and hopefully landing an interview?
Yeah, so there's no job fairs like the old days where you could go and present yourself. So you just have to reach out to the companies. The internet is a phenomenal thing. Find the companies that interest you. Make sure you want to go work for a company that's doing something that you think you would be excited doing. If you love cars, you want to be applying to Ford and GM. If you love airplanes, it's us, Boeing and Lockheed. If you love ships, Ingalls Shipyard, Newport News, Bath Iron Works. So you find the company and you research them. It's like we were talking earlier about an interview. You research the company, because in your cover letter that you're going to send with your resume, you want to demonstrate to them that you know something about their business, or you took the time to learn something about their business. It'll set you apart, because most people don't do it. They just say, my name is John Doe, here's my resume. Okay, I got 30 of those today. And I got one, my name is John Doe. I've been very fascinated with your company for many years. I really like your product XYZ. I saw it at the show, blah, 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 and it was really remarkable. Tell them a story, play into them, make them feel like you're interested in them. They want to hire someone that's interested in them.
Right. Another question. Would you advise a student that needs one more class to graduate to look for a job or a co-op opportunity? Will a company consider them if they are just one class away from graduating?
Sure. Because of the HR rules, they wouldn't hire you as a degreed engineer, but you could be a co-op or an intern, and you got one more semester to go, and then bam, you switch over and you become a full-time level 1 engineer. So yeah, absolutely, go for it. Great. Don't hold back.
Definitely. An advice you wish someone would have told you early on in your career that you would share with our students and our current grads on the call today?
I'm going to give you one that I don't wish I got. I'm going to give you one that I actually got from my dad. My dad, when we were kids, used to emphasize to us to respect everybody. He was pre-diversity, pre-social justice. He never knew color and he never knew gender. People were just people, and he respected everybody, and he taught us to respect everybody. It is the difference in people that makes us powerful as a country. And I would say, as you go into your career, look at that. Look at everybody you interact with and treat them with respect. Listen to what they have to say. No idea is a bad idea until proven to be a bad idea. So embrace the environment you're in, embrace the people that you're in. Just kind of love each other. I know it doesn't get said very often, but just sort of embrace each other, help each other, take care of each other, and the world will be a much better place.
Wonderful, great words. Um, Someone's asking, do you know if there are smaller engineering companies in the LA area?
I'm sure there are. I don't know of any off the top of my head. But again, the internet would probably get you more than you ever want. Your challenge would
Right,
probably be filtering through and trying to get to the ones that make sense for you.
great. Um, Someone who is a mechanical engineer, or jack of all trades, how does a hiring manager look at chemical engineers, and how does a chemical engineer sell his or herself to a company?
I think what you can do is look at the demographics of the company that you're going for. So if you're a chemical engineer and you come to Northrop Grumman, we have chemical engineers. We need them. They're essential. But we only have a handful of them. We have more aero, more mechanical, more double E, more computer science by a long shot. But that's Northrop Grumman. We designed airplanes. We're not making, creating new things out of chemicals. So if you were to target a biomed company or a pharmaceutical or some other company where there's a high percentage of chemical engineers and only a few mechanicals and electricals, then you have a better shot. So if chemical engineering is your degree, you want to focus on companies that need a lot of chemical engineers.
Okay, great. So I think we're almost up to the hour. Any final thoughts or observations you would like to share with our alumni and our students on the call today?
I would say just thank you for letting me, babble here for a little bit. I'm becoming that old man that loves to tell stories. I hope you've gotten something out of it. I would say that as you've worked through your career, give it everything you got. Sometimes you're going to have jobs that are not that exciting, and that's okay. Give it your best and look for a new one. Hopefully in the same company. Let's say you're doing stress analysis for Northrop and you've been doing it for a year and it's kind of monotonous now. You don't like it that much anymore. Okay, we'll look for a new assignment within Northrop Grumman. And oh, by the way, if you are not finding the company to help you do that, then you need to find a new company because you are going to spend a great deal of your time working. And the last thing you want to do is to get where I am at your retirement party where you're standing at the podium and looking back and saying, that was not very fun. You want to stand at that podium and say, that was a blast. So I wish you all the very, very best in your careers. Take care of each other, and maybe our paths will cross somewhere down the road.
Thank you so much, Chris. You are truly an inspiration, and for our alumni and our students, first generation, and you work your way up. We truly admire you. And one question before we go: if any student is interested in connecting with you, are you okay if they follow you on LinkedIn, or if you want us to email us so we could connect you?
No, I have about 3,000 links on LinkedIn right now. So you're welcome to join me. You can message me through LinkedIn, and if I can help you in any way, I'd be happy to do so.
We thank you for that. Definitely, if you want to connect with Chris, look for him on LinkedIn. We thank you so much for your time again. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us and your questions. This was recorded and will be living on our website, and I invite you to follow us on social media and learn about other sessions like this.